Larry Hagman's smile on I Dream of Jeannie hid a far more complicated reality than audiences ever imagined. While millions watched him play the charming, slightly flustered astronaut Tony Nelson, Hagman himself was unraveling behind the scenes. During the show's run, he later admitted that he suffered emotional breakdowns as often as once a month. At the same time, he was drinking heavily, sometimes consuming several bottles of champagne a day, and experimenting with drugs in ways that alarmed those around him. The contrast between the light-hearted fantasy on screen and the turmoil off camera could not have been sharper. When NBC began casting I Dream of Jeannie in 1964, Hagman was not their first choice. The network wanted a calm, clean-cut astronaut who could ground the show's magical premise. Hagman, then 33, was restless, impulsive, and fond of improvisation. In early meetings he twisted dialogue, cracked jokes, and treated scripts like loose suggestions. Executives initially rejected him, worried that his unpredictability would be impossible to manage in a weekly sitcom. Creator Sidney Sheldon, however, slowly came to see that Hagman's nervous energy might actually be the show's secret weapon. Against network hesitation, he took the risk and cast him. Barbara Eden sensed the chemistry immediately. From their first rehearsal, the pairing worked effortlessly. Hagman's anxious astronaut and Eden's wide-eyed Jeannie balanced each other in a way that felt natural and alive. When NBC began expressing doubts about Hagman's temperament only weeks into production, Eden stood her ground. She believed replacing him would destroy the show's magic, and her loyalty played a major role in keeping him employed. That loyalty became one of the defining forces of the series. On set, Hagman behaved like a man fueled by nerves. He moved constantly, ad-libbed jokes, and disrupted table reads with bursts of manic humor. While Eden and Bill Daly often laughed, producers worried viewers would see Tony Nelson as unstable rather than charming. Sheldon eventually asked Hagman to rein himself in, but the nervous edge never fully disappeared. Instead, it became part of the character's appeal. Off-camera, however, Hagman's life was growing darker. He drank to calm his anxiety and to quiet what he described as constant mental noise. Over time, alcohol became a daily necessity. His mood swung unpredictably from exuberant charm to sudden anger. Crew members learned to tread carefully. Eden, meanwhile, continued to protect him, smoothing tensions with producers and quietly absorbing the strain so filming could continue. As the seasons went on, Hagman's behavior grew more troubling. He could be possessive and overly attentive toward Eden, fixing her costume himself or lingering longer than necessary. Some crew members found this uncomfortable, though few confronted him directly. Stories circulated of him tracking her movements on set or appearing uninvited in her dressing room. While many of these anecdotes were exaggerated over time, there was broad agreement that Hagman relied on Eden emotionally and feared losing her support. By 1966, his drinking had become impossible to hide. He often carried a thermos that supposedly held coffee but unmistakably smelled of alcohol. He might empty several bottles of champagne before lunch and continue drinking through the afternoon. Years later, Hagman admitted that mixing champagne and vodka nearly killed him and ultimately destroyed his liver, leading to a transplant decades later. In a decision that seems astonishing in hindsight, producers sent him to therapy, where he was reportedly encouraged to experiment with drugs like LSD and marijuana to relax. Hagman took that advice seriously. He later said he tried LSD multiple times and even peyote once. On some days he arrived on set still under the influence, forgetting lines or laughing uncontrollably while the crew worked around him. Eden once again held scenes together, calmly covering for his mistakes and keeping production moving. Despite the chaos, many of his co-stars remained loyal. Bill Daly spoke warmly of Hagman throughout his life, emphasizing the joy and humor they shared. Hayden Rourke, who played Dr. Bellows, was known as a stabilizing presence on set, kind and professional even when tensions rose. While fans later imagined dramatic confrontations and walkouts, verified accounts describe a cast that endured Hagman's instability rather than openly rebelling against it. During the late 1960s, Hagman's mental health deteriorated further. He later described experiencing severe emotional collapses throughout the show's run, even as he continued to perform on cue. At one point, after quitting several substances at once, he broke down physically and emotionally on set, overwhelmed by withdrawal while cameras waited. Eden witnessed these moments up close. In later interviews, she spoke of his brilliance alongside his volatility, choosing professionalism and calm instead of confrontation. Over the years, fans embellished these struggles into increasingly dramatic legends. Stories of constant sobbing in trailers, secret therapy sessions with Eden, and extreme on-set meltdowns. Some tales, like rumors of him urinating on the set in a drunken rage, were never supported by studio records. What is documented is that NBC executives were repeatedly alarmed by his behavior and seriously considered firing him more than once. Eden's steady defense and the undeniable chemistry between the leads kept him in place until the series ended in 1970. As creative pressure mounted, the network forced changes that strained everyone involved. NBC insisted Tony and Jeannie marry, despite creator Sidney Sheldon's belief that unresolved tension was the heart of the show. The wedding was staged with enormous publicity in late 1969, but ratings continued to slip, and the series was canceled soon after. After Jeannie, Eden faced her own hardships, including personal losses that reshaped her life. She continued working, choosing projects carefully and avoiding reunions that felt hollow. When she finally agreed to appear on Dallas in 1990, she insisted on playing a powerful new character rather than a nostalgic version of Jeannie. Reuniting with Hagman was unsettling in its familiarity. She later said their rhythm returned instantly, as if nothing had changed. By then, Hagman was world-famous as J.R. Ewing and earning enormous salaries, but his drinking continued behind the scenes until his health collapsed. His liver transplant in 1995 forced sobriety, and he spoke openly afterward about the damage he had done to himself. In her memoir, Eden reflected honestly on the highs and lows of her career and her bond with Hagman, while leaving some moments deliberately unspoken. Those silences fueled speculation, but what remains clear is the complexity of their connection. It was built on chemistry, loyalty, strain, and survival. When Hagman died in 2012, Eden mourned him publicly, acknowledging a bond that had lasted nearly half a century. Their story endures as a reminder that even the brightest television magic can be powered by deeply human fragility, and that some connections once formed are never entirely sealed away.